Our next session, Beauty Powered by Nature, Partnerships for a More Sustainable Future. Please welcome Shaila Raghav, Chief Climate Officer, Time.
All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our next session, which is a really interesting and engaging one that's focused on beauty powered by nature. I am honored to be here on stage with colleagues from L'Oreal and partners that are supporting and are on the frontier of ingredient and material innovation. When you think about beauty, you think about all of the ingredients that go into the creams that we use, shampoos, lotions. Those all have to come from somewhere, and oftentimes they're sourced from nature. And so it's quite exciting to see what L'Oreal is doing to ensure that that supply chain and that source of ingredients doesn't deplete our precious biodiversity, but rather also respects, honors, and helps leverage the opportunities that we have to create both safe, resilient, and sustainable supply chains. So I will now introduce our panelists. We're going to have a conversation just to learn a little bit more about their approach to nature and beauty. And then we will reserve about 10 minutes for questions from all of you. So I'm just cueing all of you and giving you a preview into what's to come. There's going to be a QR code up on the screen where there's an application called Slido. And you're most welcome to submit your questions directly into that application, and then we will direct a few of them towards our panelists at the end of our session. So just by way of background and context, all of you may have seen that L'Oreal has a booth when you enter this floor. And over there, you'll see a demonstration, kind of an experiential display of some of the work that you're going to hear about today. But this really goes back many years. L'Oreal has a program called L'Oreal for the Future that kicked off in 2020, and we're now at the midway point. We're 5 years into the implementation of that plan. And so that's what we're going to hear about. We're going to hear about what's going well, what some of the challenges are, and more importantly, why L'Oreal, as a large multinational beauty company, has invested in these types of solutions and thinks that they are important. So on our panel today, we have Anna Kluich, who is the Vice President of Research and Innovation, the Global Head of Green Sciences and L'Oreal for the Future. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you.
We also have Adam Jones, who's all the way at the end. He is the Vice President of Business Development for North America at L'Oreal. And then we have two L'Oreal partners. We have Barbara Belvisi, who is the founder and CEO of Interstellar Lab. Welcome, Barbara. And last but not least, straight from probably a phone call / high traffic situation, we're so happy that you were able to join us, Tony. Tony Martins, the co-founder and CEO of Plantable Foods. Welcome. So Anna, maybe why don't you start by kicking off and telling us a little bit more. I mean, I've mentioned this L'Oreal for the Future. I mentioned the green sciences work that L'Oreal is doing. Can you tell us a little bit about what it means? What is green sciences?
Sure, thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here today to speak to you about this. So L'Oreal for the Future is our corporate sustainability program, as you explained, and it runs from 2020 with objectives for 2030. And Green Sciences is really the R&I response to the L'Oreal for the Future, and it's a program that explains how we source and how we transform ingredients. So for us, sustainability is integrated into every step of the product development. We use life cycle analysis to really evaluate all of the products that we launch on the market, and what we want is to have an improved profile each time we launch a product. So by 2030, we want to source over 75% of ingredients coming from nature, as you mentioned, either from plant or from mineral sources or from recycled ingredients.
Wonderful. So, and why did L'Oreal set a commitment like this? Why is it important for there to be either recyclability or that these ingredients come from nature? What's the alternative and the status quo in the beauty industry?
So it's based on the environmental science and what science is telling us where our impacts are. So we know that we need to help transform our value chain and to transform the way we source our ingredients. So again, it's based on green sciences. So the green sciences is how we source our ingredients, how we transform, and it's based on 4 pillars: sustainable cultivation, biotechnology, green chemistry, and eco-extraction. So with sustainable cultivation, for example, we can think about Centella asiatica, which is one of the ingredients that today is sourced from Madagascar. It's known for its repair properties, and it's in our La Roche-Posay Baume B5 product. So at the beginning, we sourced Centella asiatica from Madagascar based on wild picking. So we worked with communities to ensure that they use the right methodology. After that, we developed farming option to increase actually the supply without increasing the pressure on the environment. And now we're working with our partner Interstellar Labs to see how we can leverage technology and the biopods to grow Centella asiatica in a new way. So that would be an example of sustainable cultivation.
Yeah.
Then for biotechnology is already at scale for some ingredients. For example, the hyaluronic acid used in many creams today is coming from biotechnology. Green chemistry has also been part of how we develop products for years. And one of our key anti-aging molecules, Proxylin, is based on green chemistry. And finally, for eco-extraction, at the booth, as you mentioned, you can see an example of collaboration with a startup called Cosmos International that developed an osmo-bloom process that extracts the most volatile parts of the perfumery using only air. So things that were previously lost during the extraction process with classical methods, now you can actually capture these molecules and you use it in an eco-design process that uses only air and no water or any other solvents. And so for us, as you can see, green sciences is really about bringing innovation and sustainability to our ingredients.
Yeah. And this is also cool. I mean, what response do you get from consumers? Do consumers actually feel and see the benefit when you integrate these types of ingredients into your products?
So for consumers, what they got is safe and efficacious products with some innovation. They also get a more sustainable product, but to be honest, this is not always so visible to them.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of this is done behind the scenes, and it's as part of your commitment because you recognize that overall, for the resilience of your supply chain, for longevity of your company, that integrating more green ingredients is just good business. And sometimes it's consumer facing, and sometimes you're doing it behind the scenes.
Exactly, it's good business and it's our responsibility. We also look at it as our responsibility. Being one of the largest player in cosmetic industry, we see it as our responsibility.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about that. But thank you, and we'll hear from Barbara shortly. But before we go to you, Barbara, Adam, can you tell us a little bit about? I mean, we've seen what L'Oreal's doing inside the company. Can you tell us about how you work with entities and companies and startups and innovators outside of L'Oreal?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for the question. And that's really my job, is to help L'Oreal engage with the external world. And why do we do it? We do it because the problems we're tackling are so big with climate and biodiversity and sustainability. It's really too much. It's too big of a problem for just one company or even one industry to tackle on its own. And as you've seen throughout industries, there's more of a trend in going to the outside and collaborating with partners to solve these big problems. And that's exactly why we do it. We collaborate with startups, with academics, with research institutes, with venture capital firms who help us drive these innovations. Just really anyone in the innovation ecosystem, we're open to partnering with and to learning from and to really driving together to get a more sustainable solution.
Yeah, and what would you say is your long-term goal then? Is the idea that you want to build kind of an ecosystem of partners, or how do you see this fitting into the big picture for your own corporate goals?
It's the external collaboration is becoming more and more important to L'Oreal and to the industry in itself. So what we see going into the future is to have more of these collaborations in a more meaningful way and to really move them past the proof of concept stage and the pilot stage, but to scale them up and get them into the hands of our consumers, into real products that people can use, feel, put on their face, and have those products and solutions be much more sustainable than they are today.
Yeah, and can you give just maybe shout out a couple examples that have been the most inspiring to you as you've worked with partners?
Yeah, I like my job because I'm inspired every day by the partners and by the smart people inside my company too, and how they work together. We're lucky enough to have two partners up here right now, so I'd like to highlight them if I could. With Interstellar Labs, we have a biopod being tested now that grows in a controlled, cultivated way and saves 99% water usage. So that's something that we're really proud about and something that we rely on our partner to bring us that technology, and we rely on ourselves to kind of scale it up and move it along. And right to my right, we have Tony from Plantable, who has already built a business in the food industry, but we're working with him to see if we can translate that into cosmetics and beauty, because that's what we do. That's what we're interested in. And so by having sustainable cultivation with his technology platform, it could expand our ingredient platform with brand new novel ingredients that are more sustainable and that can be really exciting for our consumers.
Yeah, and I'm sure you come across technologies or ingredients that surprise you all the time, and that you, even just thinking about some of those non-traditional applications of technologies, and that just opening up an entire window into new use cases.
Yeah, and that's really one of the fun parts about the job too, is you get to be creative and have these conversations with people completely outside of the beauty industry who have no real interest at first in exploring it. And it's part of my job to highlight the possibilities that this could be a new vertical for you, this could be a new revenue stream for you, and we could really do something good and exciting together. And working with adjacent industries to bring out these new technologies is really exciting too, because there's no competition between us. We could be very transparent with each other and say, look, we're both here to win, and I can't win unless you win. So let's do that together.
Wonderful. So let's hear from some of your partners now. Barbara, so Interstellar Labs. Yep. And biopods, we've heard this referred to. What is a biopod? I know you initially developed it for space, but what's the beauty application here?
So at Interstellar Lab, we have a space and an Earth market. And basically, we spin off the technology that we design for a future space habitat for sustainability application on Earth. So in a nutshell, what we do is called AI control greenhouse system. So it's advanced control environment agriculture. Inside our structure, you can actually see it's the smallest Earth version that we have is showcased on L'Oréal booth at the entrance. But it's a very advanced greenhouse, completely sealed system. You have a lot of sensors, cameras, and it recreates the climate. And the ideal condition for plants to grow. And it's controlled by AI. And so we have our different farming system. You have an AI agent that is looking at what's going inside and just adapting the condition to accelerate the growth of the plant and trigger the production of specific molecule inside the plants. So plants react to the environment. I usually take the example of wine. When it's a drought and you have a lot of sun, then the grapes will make sugar. I mean, I'm not a scientist, so excuse my the way that I generalize things. But, and it's the same for the other plants. So it's the same for the scent. It's the same for what is called secondary metabolite. And so we don't use GMO. What we use is the climate to trigger the reaction inside the plants, so we can get healthy plants, stable sourcing, very good quality, sustainably, and making sure with less biomass we can extract, they can extract what they need for their product. And we do that in this, autonomous farming system.
Oh, that's so interesting. So you developed this technology or this system to be able to cultivate life outside of Earth, but yeah, you're actually applying it to a very real world use case. Yeah. Did you ever imagine that there would be this kind of application or collaboration with a company like L'Oréal?
So initially the whole vision of the company, so we started 7 years ago, and actually at the beginning I was working on the Earth greenhouse. It was nothing related to space, but a greenhouse that will capture CO2, recycle the water, and be fully autonomous. We have some problem on Earth regarding agriculture, so I was just trying to find a solution and work on that. And at the time, the space industry was taking off, and so the dream of bringing life to space kicked off. And so I moved the company moved from designing a greenhouse from Earth to space, and especially to Mars environments. Mars is 90% CO2 atmosphere, So there are a lot of similarities with Earth, but on the opposite. And so we came up with a design that is very resilient, that is smart in terms of how you use resources and how you adapt the system to have a very efficient greenhouse. And what we did, so we developed a concept for NASA, and then we developed a concept for a space station. We got grant from NASA because they like our autonomous approach and how we reduce the use of resources and optimize the production. And from that, we did a spin-off of technology. A spin-off is when you design something initially for a specific application, and then you spin it off, and you find the Earth application. And I was actually mentioning earlier today that this year we are going to be in the NASA book called Spin-off, when it's technology that are spin-offing from space for the Earth application. And the biopod is this advanced greenhouse that accelerates plant growth, and we have great results.
That's an incredible story. And so the collaboration with L'Oreal, what did that trigger or catalyze for your company?
So, well, we started a year and a half ago. First was research. So L'Oreal came to us. Actually, we met with Anna at a conference.
We met a couple of years ago.
Yes, exactly. And so the green science team came to the facility. They saw the first farming system that we had, the different plants that we were cultivating there. Then from that, we did a research program on different plants. So as Anna was mentioning, L'Oreal has this goal to have 75% of the ingredients to be bio-based, and part of it is mineral, the other one is plants. And so then we started working on specific plants that I will not mention. I can mention Centella asiatica, but plants that are used in some strategic ingredient, extract from plants that are used into some B2C product that people are using every day, like perfume and cream, like La Roche-Posay cream, and just like looking at how fast we can grow those plants, how much less water do we use, how we can accelerate the plant cycle and always have the same quality. So that's what we did, and we moved from proof of concept to pilot production now. And what we're looking, the next phase is the scaling phase, is how you produce quantities that are enough so we can fulfill the market. And when you go to Sephora, not to mention that, or any other store, you can buy a product where the ingredient is coming from a biopod. So.
Yeah. Pardon my ignorance. What is Centella? Like, is it a flower? Is it a berry? Is it a leaf?
Alors, Centella is a plant that grows in Southeast Asia, in Madagascar. It goes very fast on the ground. So some of the problem that you have with this plant is that it can take from the soil some of the bad
the toxins.
Toxin, exactly. So it's good to do both, to have it from the ground, but also to cultivate in a controlled environment. And it looks like the money.
The money plant.
Yes, it's very similar, like leaves, round leaves like this, and it spread very quickly. We love this plant. We grow it in 3 weeks, and usually in nature is like around 9 weeks to grow it. So.
That's amazing. Well, what a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing. Now, Tony, let's go over to your end on plantable. Now, you cultivate something called lemna. So for the ignorant like me, can you also explain what lemna is, why you cultivate it, and how you do so to be part of the beauty industry?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So we started this company also about 7 years ago, and I think our whole thesis was that, as Adam introduced us, we were primarily focused on the agri-food industry, which, if you look at it, is one of the most outdated industries that the world has today. We're literally relying on the same crops and animals as we did 3,000 years ago, and we've never changed. We've mechanized, we've optimized, but like the cow or soybeans are still state-of-the-art today. And I think we thought, like, okay, if the reasoning for us to produce those crops or animals back in those days was because they were simple to grow and easy to harvest and they didn't kill anybody, with today's technology, what can we discover in nature that outperforms what we have today? And so we first needed to understand, why do people rely on these plants, or why do people rely on these animals? And what it came down to was they offer specific ingredients or compounds that improve texture, improve nutrition, and improve or generate a certain taste. And so we started to think, like, what else in nature could potentially compete or preferably outperform these so-called 3,000-year-old state-of-the-art technologies? And we found that in a natural enzyme known as rubisco, which can be found in every leafy green. It's the catalyst in the photosynthesis process. So it captures CO2, converts it into sugars. But if you're able to extract it in its native form, and for those that are non-scientists like me, think about like a raw egg white that you can still fry and make like a fried egg, or that you can whip and make a meringue. That's the liquid egg is still in its native form. So if you are able to extract the Rubisco from the leafy green in its, for lack of a better description, the raw egg white form, you basically have something that actually outperforms all of these animal proteins and plant proteins from a functionality perspective. And so we're like, wow, this is amazing. Now, what is the most sustainable and resilient source of this plant? And that's this compound. And this is what brought us to an aquatic plant known as lemna, also known by its less appetizing name, duckweed. So it's a tiny leaf that floats on the surface of water, doubles in mass every 48 hours. So you can basically harvest it every day of the week, and can be grown throughout the year. And it's very rich in Rubisco and rich in a lot of other interesting compounds as well. And so we're like, fantastic. So we connected the lemna together with the Rubisco, and we're like, okay, let's build a vertically integrated platform that allows us to optimize the cultivation of this plant, but then also convert it into, let's say, this native Rubisco product. And so fast forward 7 years, we now have our first 140-acre facility built out in a rural town in West Texas, El Dorado, a hidden gem. Yeah, we've been shipping and producing commercial quantities over the past year and a half.
Are there other applications for this compound, or is it primarily the beauty industry?
Well, so we started in food. So if you think about food, where do we have a lot of traction at the moment? I think people are starting to wake up to the idea that like our food has been infiltrated with a bunch of synthetic ingredients, that there's more and more data coming out that it's actually very bad for your health. And so a lot of companies want to remove like these synthetic emulsifiers and binders from their ingredient labels in order to clean it up. I think what has been a catalyst for us as well is that, you know, we've had 5 straight years of annual avian flu outbreaks. So a lot of food companies want to reduce or replace the amount of eggs or egg whites that they're using. So that's been a great market for us. So we're actually in retail with various baking companies at the moment, which is pretty exciting. We're now also focusing on, let's say, replacing dairy-based ingredients where the dairy ingredients are being used as an emulsifier. And so actually we're seeing a lot of demand in the food industry. And then beauty or personal care was, you know, a little bit of an oddball that came in like a couple of years ago. We got like an email from L'Oreal saying like, hey, can we get a sample? We're like, sure, whatever. What is there to lose? So we sent them a sample, you know, and we sent them a sample, and then, you know, they went quiet for like a year and a half, and then suddenly like, oh, can we get a little bit more? And that's when we're like, oh, interesting. Maybe there's something more to discover. And so actually our partnership has strengthened significantly over the past year, I would say. And for us, it's something that we initially weren't necessarily targeting because we were mostly focused on the food industry. But you know, over the past year, we've seen some exciting progress and opportunities within the space.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you are doing with L'Oreal and which?
I'm not allowed, but you know, I think you know, there are some adjacencies between what we do in the food industry and how that translates to, let's say, the personal care industry. I think for both parties, it's been an interesting learning curve from like, hey, how can you use proteins in beauty? And for us, it's like, hey, how do you operate in beauty? I think historically, I was always under the impression that if you can eat it, it's probably also, you know, safe for use in beauty. But there are some learnings to be gathered there. So I think that is something that we've been discovering and exploring over the past couple of months. But I think right now what we're trying to unlock is, A, how can we help L'Oreal decarbonize some of their products? How can we make them more natural? But also, let's say, how can we develop new textures, right? By leveraging novel functional properties that currently can't be found anywhere else, which is, you know, a super exciting project.
Yeah. So I'd love to zoom out and think about the implications for the beauty industry as a whole. I think it's really clear all the incredible work that's happening within L'Oreal and just how visionary it is to even have a program like this that both invests the time and the effort in the research and development and innovation, but also the partnerships, recognizing that this is bigger than any one company. But how have you seen this catalyze impact across the entire industry, or what is needed for the industry to kind of embrace this model more holistically? Anna, what are your thoughts?
Thank you. So yes, it's very exciting. As you understood, in fact, sustainability really for us is a vehicle to innovate. And so today we source the ingredients from plants, but tomorrow with tech, we're going to do so much more. And Lemna has so much potential in the way we will grow ingredients in the future as well for cosmetics. So do Interstellar Pods. So do other partners with whom we work, which are helping us really reinvent what an ingredient, a green or sustainable ingredient of tomorrow will be. And yes, you require a full ecosystem for that, because one of the big challenges is to get to scale. And so, yes, it helps to have startup. It helps to have a big FMCG like us, but you also need a more classical supplier value chain as well. The suppliers that have been with us for decades who know how to scale these innovations. So sometimes we also look to combine and create a whole ecosystem with the startup, with the supplier, with ourselves.
Great. Adam, what does it look like for you when you think holistically, and what are some of the barriers to scale, and what do you think are some of the opportunities to remove those barriers?
Yeah, scaling is always top of our mind because it really is what's necessary to get these products to our consumers. And we have the Green Science Incubator, which is excellent at fostering these early stage technologies that are very upstream and helping them kind of develop and also find a fit within our industry. That's sometimes the hardest part. And then we also have within our own ecosystem internally something called the Tech Accelerator, which takes the technology after it's been developed and accelerates that scaling process. And that's a way that a company like L'Oreal can help provide our resources to transform these early stage technologies into commercial realities. And that's really what we're here to do, and that's what we all want to see, because that is how we win together.
Yeah, so it's really looking at the entire value chain and the entire stage of innovation and development, because you first need to do the science and the research, and as we know, it takes years, right? You're not gonna just test it and immediately say this is gonna work in one of our products. But then once you have piloted a particular ingredient, or then how do you get that commercially viable so that it's usable not just by L'Oreal, but by the entire industry. So it's kind of looking at two different stages.
Yeah, and it's not just the usability, it's the affordability. Because we can come up with the best ingredient, but if it's $10,000 or $100,000 a kilogram,
of course,
we can't use it. So in order to get that price point that we need for our consumers, we need to be able to scale.
Yeah, and Barbara and Tony, what about for you? I mean, as innovators, as startups, at also different stages of your own technology, what do you think are some of those barriers, and do you need, how do we kind of systematize and scale these solutions in the entire industry from your vantage point?
The scalability is key for, we're a startup, so we grow and we want to scale our product. We want our technology to become more and more affordable, and the question of scalability comes at the very beginning, as well as the ROI. And so the work that we did, the work that we did with Green Science was to look at without telling any secret about the plan that we've been growing and the research that we did, but we look at the investment to buy the equipment, because there is a change. It's very important. There is a change. L'Oréal is changing its supply chain approach, which is huge. And so, and they committed to do it, and they do it with companies like us. And so the first step is okay, there is tons of innovation to develop new sustainable ingredients, but it has to make sense, sustainably speaking, but also in terms of return on investment. And it has to be affordable, because if you end up by investing a lot of money into new technology, but then it's thousands of dollars per kilogram versus the price you can get on the market is much lower, then this is not a business case. And so the first months, I will say, of collaboration were really about finding the business case and what will make sense at scale, because otherwise there is no interest in both parties to invest time and money in developing solutions that cannot scale. So the scalability part comes in very early on into the conversation, and how much we can produce, what will be the costs, long term, and all of that. And it goes back to, of course, the sustainability aspect, but also, the money. Does it make sense for both parties? Does it make sense financially speaking? Is it something that's, that can go in the future and not only be one proof of concept? So that's important. And for us as a startup, we have to think about scalability at the very beginning, especially because we're building hardware. like, we're building greenhouses. So there are like tons of components. I will not, all the bill of material that we need to, that the team needs to put together to assemble the system is pretty complex. It's not like a rocket, but it's pretty complex. And so if you think about manufacturing more greenhouses, well, we have to prepare as a startup. So we also need to understand where our partners want to go so we can prepare with the right manufacturers our capability to scale the production so we can deliver the product for them.
Yeah, so reiterating the importance of affordability as well, because if you're competing with a market where perhaps a synthetic ingredient is way cheaper and faster to produce, then you're going to be priced out of the market immediately, unless you have buyers that are willing to pay more for a bio-based ingredient, which may be the case, but
a premium, a small premium. You have the sustainability aspect. You like reduce, we like 99% less water. There are like all the sustainable goals that we can help reach. But at the end of the day, if the pricing is not competitive compared to what is available on the market, then it doesn't make sense. And actually, Antonio was talking about food. We don't use our biopod for food. I mean, all the indoor farm market crashed. Why? Because they were using expensive technology to grow leafy greens that were sold on the market for like a penny a kilogram. And so it doesn't make sense to invest into innovative technology if what you produce is not of high value.
Yes.
And so this is the reality of the market right now. So we don't do food. We focus on high value products for which it makes sense to have a complex technology and not think that you can go everywhere, but think that I need specific climatic things. So it's
Yeah, wonderful. And Tony, how do you see it?
Yeah, so the way I look at it is I think like affordability is a relative term, right? So I think as a startup, you're in the beginning, specifically if you produce your own products, you're relatively small to the overall market size. So I think focusing on a premium market first makes a lot of sense given, let's say, the small capacity that you might have at the beginning. So instead of like chasing large scale affordability from the get-go, I think you're just going to disappoint yourself quite a bit, and it actually might make a lot of sense to focus on, let's say, the high value, premium niche markets first, where you can create a competitive advantage because of the unique value that you bring. And like if I look at the food industry, there's obviously an overemphasis on cost and cheap and this and that. But if you look at some of the most successful CPG brands over the past years, they were all premium brands that were really appealing to the consumer because they offered something that was healthy and more nutritional than the status quo. And so I think there might be some similarities within the personal care space as well, where if you are able to offer a unique value or experience to a consumer, that they're more than willing to pay a slight premium. And I think if you as a startup initially can offer that value at a higher price, but because it caters to a smaller niche of the market, I think that makes a lot of sense from a beachhead market. I think from a strategic perspective, so if you think about how do you operate with large strategics, I think what is quite crucial is that not every company is the same. But there's one thing that's for sure, and that's that every large company like a L'Oreal was once a startup themselves, right? And it's really interesting to see like how well do they stay intact or in line with that DNA, that startup DNA that they once possessed versus, oh, we're risk off and we're just a large company. And I think finding the right partners that have that well established within inside of their company, that have that startup DNA is super critical. And like that's what's so exciting to see about the Green Science Incubator, where they're really trying to invigorate that startup DNA again within a company like L'Oreal.
Yeah, so it's more about the values alignment and finding partners that share purpose and whose North Star is the same as yours.
Yeah, I think so. I think yeah, like sharing purpose. I think like like you're a startup, right? And like if you think about the misalignment between like a venture-backed startup and a large strategic, is that time, right? So a large strategic thinks like, oh, this is great, 5-6 year project, it's really fast for us. As a startup, you have no clue whether you're still going to be alive in 5-6 years, yeah. Right? So like you have no clue, and so those timelines need to be aligned somewhere, And I think finding for a large corporate, what's exciting to offer to a startup is if they have, let's say, a path towards market within a feasible timeline for the startup as well. And I think that is where you really need to be aligned on purpose, but also speed to market and transparency with respect to communication.
Yeah, transparency, absolutely. Well, really wonderful points. So We have about 10 minutes left, and we have a question from the audience, so I'm gonna just offer that to whomever's inspired to answer it, and then we'll do a rapid fire to conclude.
Oof.
So our question is, in many sustainability initiatives, we focus on environmental impact. How do your companies, or how do you think about social and governance impacts of your product? So what's kind of that broader ESG lens in addition to the environmental aspect of your work? Yep, Tony?
Yeah, so I'm Dutch originally, but moved to San Diego about 7 years ago, and then now we've built out our first facility in rural West Texas. And so, when you grow up in the Netherlands and you think about rural West Texas, you think about cowboys shooting guns in the air, right? So for us to go there, I didn't really know what to expect, and specifically how are they going to embrace a company that grows novel plants and produces proteins that might compete with compounds that animals produce, right? Which is obviously at the core of that industry over there. Now, what I've seen actually, that since we've been there, you have specifically in the United States, but probably also around the world, a lot of, let's say, rural destinations where a lot of rural economies start to degrade. They don't have a lot of economic opportunities anymore. So think about rural West Texas. Used to have a lot of oil wells. They're starting to dry up. They might have had animal agriculture or traditional agriculture, but because of climate change, the yields or outputs are starting to decrease. So you have these slowly but surely ghost towns developing where people are without a job and not a lot of, let's say, upside in life. And so what we've done over the past 2 years, since we landed in this place called El Dorado, we actually became the largest employer in the county. We actually grew median household income in the county by 61%. And actually the people over there, by being part of the transition instead of having to fear the transition, are just super excited to come work with us, maybe swap a little bit of their brisket towards, let's say, plant-based foods, you know what I mean? But actually giving people the opportunity to be part of something instead of having to fear that everything takes place in urban environments has been super critical. Because I think bringing those people along, which is something that agriculture and the food industry has always done, but has also forgotten over the past 30, 40 years, I think is super critical if you actually want to have a grounds-up transition in society.
Oh, that's such a great link from the environment. What may have started as an environmental purpose has then had knock-on effects and ripple effects across
100%.
the social and governance space and been a driver of economic growth and job creation. Any other examples or reflections on social aspects of your work?
For us, it's embedded in our corporate objectives, obviously. So it's a different scale and different opportunity. But for us, it's a fourth pillar at a global level. So we work on climate, we work on nature, we work on circularity, and of course on the social impact. Because you cannot separate the two. You cannot separate the climate transformation without the social transformation that needs to go with it. And so it's integrated in the supply chain, how we buy products through different suppliers. And it's also integrated in the funds that we sponsor aside from the L'Oréal for the Future program. So we have a 50 million program for women in the endangered situations to support that.
Wonderful. A few other questions have popped up that I was just looking at, so maybe I'll just quickly ask a couple of these. Barbara, how does the interstellar system compare to vertical hydroponic farming?
So we don't do hydroponic. Hydroponic, you have the roots that are floating in water. We used to do aeroponics. Now we do. We developed actually a new spray system. So we spray very thin droplets. It's kind of a fog-ish technology, but we spray very thin droplets of water at the root level. And then we take the water out. So it's, we play with the water stress actually to trigger plant reaction. So what it means that we can do a lot of species that cannot be grown in hydroponic system. Because in hydroponics you can do lettuces, herbs, aromatics, but there are some flowers or like centella and different plants that we've been cultivating. We did vanilla, we did vetiver, we did a lot of different things that cannot go in hydroponics. So this modularity makes it very different. Then the particularity of the greenhouse that we're developing is, again, the autonomous and the AI agent that is controlling everything. So each farm is controlled by its own agents that play that, and the intelligence is at the pod level. So the pod will adapt everything. And the interface for the user, for us, is very important that the interface is as simple as possible, because currently climate computers are a nightmare. for operator to operate them. What we want is a very simple interface. So you just talk to the AI, and the AI will tell you, you can harvest, or that's all. And you don't need the human to control the climate. The machine is doing it itself. So I will say it's the growing system and the AI components is what makes us very different from other indoor farm solutions.
Yeah, so it's smart farming.
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful. So now let's do a quick rapid fire. So just a sentence or two. Just wanted to get your final thoughts and reflections. What is the biggest misconception about green science, green farming, green sourcing? I don't know, I'll start with you.
Usually that sustainable doesn't mean performance. And it's not the case at all, because we know that, in fact, you cannot sell a product without the same performance. We know that the consumers will reject it. And in fact, as you can see from these examples, you can use the biopods to stimulate the plants to produce different type of molecules. This is innovation. This will bring either the same performance or even additional performance. You can use lemna. You can use different types of technology and nature to produce more performance.
Yeah, because there's this sense that if it's green, it doesn't work as well. So thank you. Yeah, Barbara.
I will add to that for a lot of investors, especially, sustainability is not scalable, and it is actually, but you have to think about it from the very beginning.
Great, Tony.
Yeah, I want to build on that point. Actually, I think the biggest misconception is that we're trying to revolutionize or decarbonize industries that have been built over hundreds of years, and you can't really expect that to happen within 1 or 2 years. But it's going to take time, right? It might take a decade or two. But I think that's the biggest misconception. I think in the current investor landscape, I would say. Yeah.
We have to be patient.
Yeah.
Adam.
I think a common misconception is that these things are all about ingredients. When I believe that you really have to look at their overall value chain and be very conscious of that and not just focus just on ingredients.
Fantastic. All right, and then now looking ahead, next 10, 15 years, L'Oreal for the futures until 2030. If we're in 2030, 2035, what excites you the most about what's on the horizon or what you think we can hope to see for the industry? Anna.
Thanks for the question. I love it. What excites me most is being able to put all of this together in one product and across the value chain, and not have separate initiatives on sustainable cultivation on one product, biotechnology or vertical farming on another, but being able to put all of that across the value chain and really massified.
Yeah, and you see that coming.
Yes, I'm an optimist. I see it coming. We're going to do everything possible to make it happen. But I think that is the future of ingredients. There's no going back.
Oh, so super exciting. Thank you. Barbara.
Well, what I see I will talk about the company. I would love for us to reach a stage where the biopods become the standard for farming. And so we manufacture many and we can install. Then maybe we can reduce the cost of the biopod and move into the food market, because it's all a question of cost. But I see many biopods used, optimize production, and then more land give back to biodiversity and conservation program.
Maybe we'll each have a biopod in our homes.
We do mini ones, but that's for space. But
yeah. Who knows? Maybe we can have home biopods.
Maybe I can hook you up with one temporarily.
This one you can have in your garden, actually.
Fantastic. Tony.
Yeah, so I think by 2030, what my personal goal is for the company, I think like often when we present Plantable, we're like, oh, we do Lemna, we do Rubisco, like, oh, so what are you competing with? I hope that, by 2030, let's be ambitious, that there's no more question like, oh, what are you competing with, but that you've defined a new category of plants and compounds in market, right? And I think that is my personal goal, because that means that we actually have built and established a well self-defined market.
Yeah, so like just developing a whole new product.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like I just had that's why I was a little bit late. I had a philosophical conversation about if you were to wind back time and you would have the first chicken and an egg, like how would you describe what the egg is, right? The egg became its own platform, its own market, and I think that's our goal with Lemna and Rubisco as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you, Tony. Adam.
I think I'm most excited to see these partners that we have, these startups that we have existing in the Green Science Incubator and other similar incubators really move beyond the proof of concept stage and validate their technology, scale it up, and become big with us to really be key suppliers and partners to us. And in that way, we both win.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you all for your candor, for your reflections, for your insights, for your leadership in each of your domains. I've learned a lot. I don't think I fully had even appreciated the extent of research and the depth of understanding that you all have cultivated and built, and all of the new innovations that you're bringing to products and to the market that I've probably used and didn't even know. So I hope we can all reflect on this and tell this story and gain a greater appreciation for just the wonder of science and the future. So thank you very much, and look forward to continuing the conversation at the L'Oreal booth.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.